Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we're going to do sort of like more of a study group session, which is in a way just as good, if not even better, because we get more Prabhupada. I admit, as I told you on the message, I moved to Mayapur. It was like a huge, I went from Nice to from X to Paris to West Bengal, Mayapur in the span of 5 days. And I'm sorry, I should have, because it only takes me 20 minutes, a half hour to do these questions, but I didn't, and I apologize. But I hope Prabhupada will be kind to us and make up the difference. So please forgive me, and let's read from verse 13 on, huh?
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah.
And we'll just do a reading session. So if you see something or hear something that's really inspiring, just jump in, and I'll do the same. So I'll start with verse 13.
Yeah.
So Krishna says, Vidihinam asrishtanam mantrahinam adakshinam shraddha virahitam yagyam tamasam parichakshate. Translation.
Which verse you are reading, Prabhu?
13, right? We're starting on 18:13.
Yeah. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know. I have some different.
Yes. I went to 17. Sorry. Here we go. Thanks for catching that. Okay, so here's verse 13 and 14, right?
Yeah.
Panchaitani mahabaho karanani nibodame sankhye kritante praktani siddhaye sarvakarmanam adhishtanam tata karta karanam cha pritak vidam vidas cha pritak cheshta vividas cha pritak cheshta daivam chaivatra panchanam. O mighty armed Arjuna, learn from me of the 5 factors which bring about the accomplishment of all action. These are declared in Sankhya philosophy to be the place of action, the performer, the senses, the endeavor, and ultimately the supersoul. So nice, huh? There's 5 factors of action. The place where you're doing it, who's doing it, the senses through which we're doing it, the effort we put into it, and finally, the supersoul. And you know this verse 13:3?
I don't recollect.
In 13:3, it's either 13:3 or 13:23. Upadrashta numantacha.
Yeah.
Upadrashta numanta. What verse is that? That's 13:23. In 13:23, Krishna says, Upadrashta numantacha bharta bhokta maheshwara paramet miti chapto te hismin purusha paraha. Right? So he's speaking about how in this body, so the body in front of you, and the reason I love this verse and I know it by heart is because this verse was taught to me by Vijay Prabhu. Have you heard of Vijay Prabhu? He's an old Hridaya Nandamara's disciple. He's the GBC minister for book distribution. And when I got my training as a brahmachari in the Los Angeles ISKCON temple, and I used to go to the Los Angeles airport every day to try to sell Prabhupada's books. God, it was so difficult. Yeah. Vijay was there, and he had been doing it for already like 20 years or something, and he was kind of like our book distribution guru. And his meditation was this verse, that every person you're approaching in the airport, these strangers that you don't know, they don't know you, they're in a rush to catch their flight, or they're tired after their flight, inside that body, black woman or a Chinese man or a young white student, whatever. Inside that body, there's 2 souls, right? There's the individual soul, and then there's Paramatma. And so in this verse here, back to this verse, Krishna says, yet in this body, so just before, he said that in this body, there's the individual soul, the individual Purusha, right? But there's also another soul in this body, a transcendental enjoyer, right? Bhoktaram, as Krishna says in 529. He is the Lord, the Supreme Proprietor, who exists as the overseer, he is known as the super soul, and he exists as the permitter. So you see the link between this verse and 18:13 here?
Yes.
Right? The Paramatma, Krishna says here, he just says super soul, just the super soul, right? As a matter of fact, where in the verse is Paramatma mentioned?
Basically, it is Daivam. Like Daivam is mentioned.
Daivam. So Prabhupada takes the liberty to call it Paramatma, right?
Yeah. People even call that Daivam as destiny. Some people call it as destiny.
Right. Well, in a way, it's true. I mean, Krishna ultimately is behind destiny. Like, not a blade of grass moves without Krishna's sanction, right? So if something is so-called meant to be by destiny, that means that Krishna ordained it, or at least allowed it to be a reality, right?
Yeah. Like generally, what we hear is like it is based on our own law of karma, right? Like people, no, based on own actions, we get the result of those actions.
Right.
Generally, what I heard is that unless we are devoted to God, generally Krishna just be like a witness. He doesn't interfere or intervene in our own day-to-day actions. He's just like a witness. Unless we surrender to him, then he may intervene and
but
be like an active agent.
He allows.
Yeah.
I mean, not a blade of grass moves without God's sanction. So he allows the karma to be administered. You know Bhanu Maharaj, right? Bhanu Swami?
Yes. Yeah,
I remember he gave this wonderful analogy which struck me. You know, Bhanu Maharaj is very special for me because I only had his association a few times, and each time was like so powerful. I don't agree with him with the fall of the soul. I believe the soul falls from Goloka, and he tends to say no. Aside from that, I love what he's, and a long time ago, gave a seminar on astrology and Krishna consciousness. It's like, I think, a 1-day seminar or 2-day seminar. And I don't know where he got this analogy from, but it stuck with me. And it was actually here in Mayapur a long time ago, 25 years ago. And he said that, just like, echoing what you just said, that if you're not a devotee, then let's say this is your karmic path, right? I'll just go like that. And this is you. And so you are completely stuck to the karmic path that you're meant to take. That's already, designed by, like you said, your past activities. When you become a devotee of Krishna, technically, you're detached from the track. But what he said, which really struck me, which I find fascinating, it's kind of depressing for those who think that, oh, great, by becoming Krishna conscious, my material life will greatly improve. I'll become rich, or I'll have a great wife, or I'll become really successful. Would not have if I wasn't a devotee. Tough luck, buddy, because in most cases, Bhanu Maharaj said, even though technically, there is no more contact between the soul and his karmic destiny, generally speaking, that soul still basically follows the same more or less path that he would have if he was not a devotee. So technically he's out, but Krishna doesn't generally like make these huge transformations. You basically still go, but it's nice at least to know that you're in Krishna's hands, so if it gets, and I just think this is really nice Christian analogy that made me tear up more than once. Did you ever hear it? It's like a guy who goes back to heaven or to the spiritual world, and he looks at the footsteps of his life, on the sand of his entire life, and he sees that right next to his tracks there's another pair. You hear that one?
Yeah, I heard this from you. I think you only.
So what you tell the conclusion then?
No, it's always there, like invisible partner of us. Like Krishna says that I am your dear friend.
Yeah,
so he's always there with us. But we don't realize him, we don't see him because we don't reciprocate.
You forgot the main thing, my friend. The main thing is that this guy complains because he says, look, right there in my life, and this time in my life, those few times when it was the hardest in my life, you disappeared. All of a sudden, instead of having 4 footsteps, there's 2. Remember? Why did you leave me? Why did you forsake me? Especially in those most difficult times. And Krishna or God, no, it's probably, I mean, a Christian will not say it's Krishna who said, but God, says, no, you don't understand. In those most difficult moments, I was carrying you.
Yeah, yeah, I remember. Yeah.
So back to the verse, Paramatma. Krishna, right, talks about Paramatma as the fifth factor in action. And if we want to know more about the super soul, or Daiva, as the actual Krishna's words use, the actual words that Krishna uses, we can go to 1323. And especially when it comes to the ultimate permission given by God, it's right there. What is it? Paramat Upadrash Anumanta. That's it. Anumanta. Krishna is the Anumanta. He permits, he allows. Right? Not a blade of grass moves without God's sanction. Okay, purport by Prabhupada. A question may be raised that since any activity performed must have some reaction, how is it that the person in Krishna consciousness does not suffer or enjoy the reactions of work? The Lord is citing Vedanta philosophy to show how this is possible. He says that there are 5 causes for all activities and for success in all activities, and one should know these 5 causes. Sankhya means the stock of knowledge, and Vedanta is the final stock of knowledge accepted by all leading acharyas. Even Shankara accepts the Vedanta Sutra as such. Therefore, such authority, let me see if there's any, okay. Therefore, such authorities should be consulted. The ultimate will is invested in the supersoul. You see, right there. The ultimate will is invested in the supersoul. Like, he's the ultimate permitter, Anumanta. And that's what a lot of people don't understand, Like, when you don't believe in God, you don't believe in Krishna, then it's like, oh yeah, it was just bad luck, or it was good luck, or, they just say it's luck, right? I just got lucky, or even worse, I planned it out so well that, my plan was bound to success, and there was success. But they forget that, at least what we believe, that behind that, there's a Paramatma, right? The ultimate will is invested in the supersoul, as it is stated in the Gita, Sarvasya Chaham Hridi. He is engaging everyone in certain activities. Acts done under his direction from within yield no reaction, either in this life or in the life after death. The instruments of actions are the senses, and by senses, the soul acts in various ways. And for each and every action, there is a different endeavor. But all one's activities depend on the will of the Supersoul, who is seated within the heart as a friend. The Supreme Lord is the supreme cause. Under these circumstances, he who is acting in Krishna consciousness under the direction of the Supersoul situated within the heart is naturally not bound by any activity, right? Because he's acting according to the will of Krishna, right? Under the direction, thy will be done, again, Christians say. Those in complete Krishna consciousness are not ultimately responsible for their actions. Everything is dependent on the supreme will, the supersoul, the supreme personality of Godhead. Now, of course, if you're in complete Krishna consciousness, you're not going to perform any sins, right? You're not going to be sinful. Because one could say, well, you see, a devotee, and then, raped a child or something, and then like, oh, well, he's not responsible for his actions. No, you were not in complete Krishna consciousness if you broke regulative principles, or worse, you did something nasty to a child, So the complete Krishna consciousness is is a crucial point here. Like, right? You're not responsible for your actions if you're in complete Krishna consciousness. So I'll read the verse again, 2 verses, and then you can go on. O mighty armed Arjuna, learn from me of the 5 factors which bring about the accomplishment of all action. These are declared in Sankhya philosophy to be the place of action, the performer, the senses, the endeavor, and ultimately the supersoul.
Yeah. Text 15. Whatever right or wrong action a man performs by body, mind, or speech is caused by these 5 factors. Purport. The words right and wrong are very significant in this verse. Right work is work done in terms of the prescribed directions in the scriptures, and wrong work is work done against the principles of the scriptural injunctions. But whatever is done requires these 5 factors for its complete performance.
Okay, text 16, translation. Therefore, one who thinks himself the only doer, not considering the 5 factors, is certainly not very intelligent and cannot see things as they are, right? That's that maya, or that illusion that, and what's the verse? There's a very famous verse in relationship to this. It starts with prakrite. Don't disappoint me here.
From Gita, Bhagavad Gita.
Prakrite.
Prakriti stani karshati.
Prakrite kriya.
Prakriti kriyamanani. That kriyamanani was.
Prakrite kriyamanani. Prakrite kriyamanani. God, it's on the tip of my tongue. I had it. Ahankara vimuratma, right?
Yeah. Ahankara vimurat kartaham iti manyate. Kartaham iti manyate. Yeah.
Prakriti kriyamanani karma. What is it? It's 327.
Kartaham iti manyate.
Right.
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimuratma kartaham iti manyate. So now coming back to this verse, it's sort of the same thing, right? One who thinks himself the only doer, right? Ahankara vimuratma kartaham, karta aham, right? I am the doer, karta aham. Same thing. Krishna's repeating the same exact thing here, but he considers such a person not very intelligent.
Yeah.
Purport. A foolish person cannot understand that the supersoul is sitting as a friend within and conducting his actions. Although the material causes are the place, the worker, the endeavor, and the senses, the final cause is the Supreme, the personality of Godhead. Therefore, one should see not only the 4 material causes, but the supreme efficient cause as well. One who does not see the Supreme thinks himself to be the instrument. Translation again. Maybe we can do that when you read the verse, and then when you finish the purport, kindly go back and read the verse. It's nice. It gives a continuity of verses. Therefore, Krishna says, one who thinks himself the only doer, not considering the 5 factors, is certainly not very intelligent and cannot see things as they are.
Text 17, translation. One who is not motivated by false ego, whose intelligence is not entangled, though he kills men in this world, is not the slayer, nor is he bound by his actions. Purport. In these words, Lord informs Arjuna the desire to fight arises from false ego. Arjuna thought himself to be the doer of action, but he did not consider the supreme sanction within and without. If one does not know that the supreme sanction is there, why should he act? But one who knows the instrument of work, himself as the worker, and the Supreme Lord as the supreme sanctioner, is perfect in doing everything. Such a person is never in illusion. Personal activity and responsibility arise from false ego and godlessness, or a lack of Krishna consciousness. Anyone who is acting in Krishna consciousness under the direction of the Super Soul, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even though killing, does not kill. Nor is he ever affected with the reaction of such killing. When a soldier kills under the command of a superior officer, he is not subject to be judged. But if a soldier kills on his own personal account, then is certainly judged by a court of law. Translation. One is not motivated by false ego, whose intelligence is not entangled, though he kills men in this world, is not the slayer, nor is he bound by his actions.
This reminds me about this reminds me of a friend, Jérôme Castagnaro, who was one of the first friends I gave the Bhagavad Gita as it is to read after I had just gotten it, when I just, converted or awakened to Krishna consciousness. I was, telling all my friends and family, oh my God, this is like, thank you, because I found the truth. Like, and I was expecting everyone to say, wow, well, thank you, great, yes. And my God, Manusyanam sahasreshu kaschin yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschin mem veti tatvata, because nobody in my family, nobody, not a single friend, not a single family member took interest in Krishna consciousness. I had one friend who became Krishna conscious, but then he gave me back the Gita and his beads because he told me his future father-in-law, he was engaged, or he had a girl. Yeah, he was engaged to the daughter of an evangelical Christian pastor from Alabama, who told him, if you continue with this Krishna consciousness, I'm gonna kill you. You understand, my son? And so literally out of fear, he said, like, man, I'm sorry, I love it, but I can't, because I'm gonna be dead. Like, I can't do this anymore. So aside from him, nobody. And so I remember, so I had this friend, Jérôme Castagnaro, and so I gave him the Gita. He's an intelligent guy. And a few days later, he came back to me. And, in France, there's, a lot of Islamic presence and, suicide bombers. So he came up to me and said, listen, what's the difference? And I raised this because it's really relevant to this verse, right? Because it's literally killed, right? Even though you kill men in this world, you're not the slayer. So it's kind of like, Allahu Akbar, take out the detonator on your body, blow yourself up and kill whatever 500 people around you, and you go to heaven, and you got whatever 700 virgins waiting for you. That's another topic. But so he asked me, he said, what's the difference? You've got this Krishna who's supposed to be God, and he's telling Arjuna that, yeah, go ahead, fight, and because I'm ordering this, you're not going to get any sinful reaction. What's the difference between that and the Muslims who blows himself up saying Allahu Akbar, believing that it was Allah who not only wants this, but is very proud and will reward him for having done so? What do you say to that?
In the context of Bhagavad Gita, it is a personal instruction of Krishna itself, right?
Well, that's not a good argument. Sorry to cut you off, but they could say, well, it was the direct instruction of Allah.
What if you see the people who are jihadis, what they are doing? They are interpreting the statement of the
No, I mean that's your opinion, but they will say that's still not a good argument, because they will say, no, we're interpreting the words of Allah. Who are you to say that we're interpreting the Quran bad? Other Muslims may say we're interpreting it wrong, but we believe we're interpreting it right. So that's not a good argument either.
Yeah,
I have a good reason, but I'll let you guess a few times, or present some.
No, if I go with a philosophical reason, then they will not agree, right? If contextually, if you see the Bhagavad Gita is something directly Krishna is saying to Arjuna that you fight, there is no such reference as such where directly Allah is giving a specific setting.
It's a weak argument, because some could say jihad is jihad,
Yeah, because ultimately they are motivated by the false ego. That's why they
but they'll say that Hare Krishnas are also motivated by the false ego. Let me tell you what I've come up with after 30 years of him asking me this question. I think the best answer that I could provide him is this: that if we believe that Krishna was actually on the planet, Arjuna was really there, and there was a Kurukshetra battle, the facts as described are that Dharma was visibly, being upheld, and the people that this fight was, fought against were clearly, undeniably irreligious. Furthermore, I would add, in that war there were no children, there were no innocent. All the children and all the women were not involved. They were, professional soldiers. And so even my first point is not very solid, because they could say, well, look, we are also, the non-believers, they're the head of the serpent, they have to be killed. So the second point I said is really I think the best standing thing, is that this was a dharmic war in the sense that women and children are spared, whereas the jihadists, they blow themselves up irrespective of who's next to them, be they women or children. And I can't come up with a better argument.
Yeah, that is like, we are focusing on the result and deducing that cause is wrong in a way, right?
Come again?
That is like we are talking about the result and we are deducing that the cause is wrong. Like, for example, if the result is like, for example, just because in Mahabharata we haven't, there were no women and there were no children who participated, but in and of itself, it doesn't make it right. Like, inherently, it doesn't make it right. That is what they could also argue, right? Just because
not really, because they're doing the same thing. They're supposedly following a call of God. So
I think this will be an endless thing, because as Krishna says, like, if one is motivated by false ego, he'll use any kind of logic, any kind of thing to justify their things. And logic is always like, it'll never be completely agreeable to both the parties.
So let's continue then. Let's hear Prabhupada. I think I read the first sentence, right?
Yeah, I think just completed this text 17 now.
I finished the whole 17?
No,
you did.
I just read that.
So text 18. Okay, text 18 goes like this. Knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the knower are the three factors which motivate action. The senses, the work, and the doer comprise the threefold basis of action. Purport. There are three kinds of impetus for daily work: knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the knower. That's why it's important to, like, if you're doing a business transaction, you really have to have real knowledge of everything surrounding it. For example, I was just thinking, wow, this could be a good verse, for coaches, like who give advice based on Vedic knowledge to business owners or to CEOs or whatever. Purport. There are three kinds of impetus for daily work: knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the knower. The instruments of work, the work itself, and the worker are called the constituents of work. Any work done by any human being has these elements. Before one acts, there is some impetus, which is called inspiration. Any solution arrived at before work is actualized by Any solution arrived at before work is actualized is a subtle form of work. That doesn't make sense, that sentence. Any solution arrived at before work is, I would say, is actually a subtle form of work. Then work takes the form of action. First, one has to undergo the psychological processes of thinking, feeling and willing, and that is called impetus. Actually, the faith to perform acts is called knowledge. Interesting. The inspiration to work is the same if it comes from the scripture or from the instruction of the spiritual master. When the inspiration is there and the worker is there, then actual activity takes place by the help of the senses. The mind is the center of all senses, and the object is work itself. These are the different phases of work as described in Bhagavad Gita. The sum total of all activities is called accumulation of work. Translation again. Knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the knower are the three factors which motivate action. The senses, the work, and the doer comprise the threefold basis of action.
Text 19. Translation. In accordance with the three modes of material nature, there are three kinds of knowledge, action, and performance of action. Listen as I describe them. Purport. In the 14th chapter, the three divisions of the modes of material nature were elaborately described. In that chapter, it was said that the mode of goodness is illuminating, the mode of passion is materialistic, and the mode of ignorance is conducive to laziness and indolence. All the modes of material nature are binding. They're not sources of liberation. Even in the mode of goodness, one is conditioned. In the 17th chapter, the different types of worship by different types of men in different modes of material nature were described. In this verse, the Lord wishes to speak about the different types of knowledge, workers, and work itself according to the three modes.
So again,
Translation.
Krishna, sorry.
Yeah. In accordance with the three modes of material nature, there are three kinds of knowledge, action, and performance of action. Listen as I describe them.
So Krishna is going to again speak about the three modes, right? He speaks about the three modes in chapter 14, in chapter 17, in chapter 18, maybe chapter 16 also. Like the three modes is a real big piece of the Bhagavad Gita, isn't it?
Yeah.
Text 20, translation. I love this. That knowledge by which one undivided spiritual nature is seen in all existences, undivided in the divided, is knowledge in the mode of goodness. Of course, some, Mayavadi can use this. You see, Brahman is everywhere. Undivided in the divided, right? But we believe that this undivided in the divided refers to the individual Paramatma. Purport. A person who sees one spirit soul, or Paramatma or individual soul. Okay, good point. A person who sees one spirit soul in every living being, whether a demigod, human being, animal, bird, beast, aquatic, or plant, possesses knowledge in the mode of goodness. I remember the other day, where was I? I was in France. Yeah, I was in France. I was in Aix-en-Provence or Nice. I was at a bench somewhere, or I forget. I was sitting somewhere. Yeah, I was sitting, taking a break, sitting, and there was a little boy with his father, and then there was some pigeon there, and the kid, maybe 6 years old, tried to run and kick. He tried to run and kick the bird who was faster than him and, flew away. And as he was doing that, I looked at him with a smile. I said, "What did he do to you?" And he understood, he smiled. He could see that I was not mean. I was saying it lovingly to him, but still teaching him a little lesson, And he kind of a combination of shame and friendly laughter, or he acknowledged that I was right. And so, where a small thing where does it come from? It comes from this type of knowledge that we've been awakening, literally, since the last, decades or whatever, that we're practicing Krishna consciousness, where you actually see the soul. And so when you see violence committed against anyone, you speak up because you feel concerned. You feel you're part of the same family. Like Hriday Nanamarchi, I love the way he says it. He says, ultimately, there's only one cosmic family. There's only one cosmic family in existence, one Supreme Father.
Yeah.
As described in the 7th chapter, Prabhupada continues, the manifestation of the living force in every body is due to the superior nature of the Supreme Lord. Thus, to see that one superior nature, that living force in every body, is to see in the mode of goodness. So what's the difference then between seeing in the mode of goodness and seeing in the mode of pure goodness? Right? If you see that one superior nature, in other words, the soul in every body, that's the mode of goodness. But I guess if you see God, the Paramatma, that's transcendence?
Yeah.
Okay. That living energy is imperishable, although the bodies are perishable. The difference is perceived in terms of the body because there are many forms of material existence in conditional life. Therefore, they appear to be divided. Such impersonal knowledge finally leads to self-realization. Purport again. That knowledge by which one undivided spiritual nature is seen in all existences, undivided in the divided, is knowledge in the mode of goodness. That's a great verse, for like animal lovers, for animal rights activists. Oh my God. There's nothing, where else in world religions do you find this type of wisdom that totally justifies, animal ethics?
It's like, we say now unity in diversity. This is like true unity that we are calling for. Even there are so many differences that we see around, but still we have to see the spiritual spark in everyone.
Yeah.
Like that's what it is.
But who else, what other religions, talk about seeing, animals equally as humans? Like which other religions on the market of world religions today has that type of succinct, to the point, clear paradigm of seeing beyond the body, regardless of what body, whether it's, like having this not only transgender, not in the sense of changing gender, but going, through genders, not only trans, nationality, not only trans race, but, or trans ethnicity, but literally like trans animal, like trans species, where you're actually seeing different species, equally. I don't see anyone else on the market of religions having such a clear, simple paradigm as that.
Yeah, at least that conception of that we are like eternal soul has to be there. I think to have that, to even see that thing,
Yeah, but
if
did I ever
people
tell
believe
you?
that just one
Yeah,
life, then they will not even
and if they
worry
believe
about
that,
those
the
things.
ontology of the self is even a little bit the body, then they're screwed.
Yeah.
Right? As soon as you believe, even microscopically, that the identity of the self is this body, even, in part, you're screwed.
Mhm.
And that's why, again, like with all due respect, those who accept this body, mind, and soul, or body, mind, and spirit, tri-chromatic or tri-component of the self, which Christians in general do, and some people trace it back to the letter of Paul to the Thessalonians in the Bible, where he says, I hope that all of you are well, waiting for the return of our Lord in body, mind, and spirit. Did I ever tell you the story of what my priest, not my priest, the priest of the church where my father was buried, or where there was the funeral ceremony, what he said?
No.
When my father died, my older brother insisted that there'd be a funeral at the church Sainte Geneviève.
Okay.
Saint, did I tell you?
No, I haven't
No.
heard of this.
Okay, so before the funeral, I asked this priest. I had a meeting with the priest, and I said, "Listen, I'm a monk myself. I was still a brahmachari, or I mean, technically I still am a brahmachari, but like I think I was wearing saffron or not. Whatever. The point is, like I told him, I'm a monk or I'm a priest, and I'd like to, I believe that the soul is eternal, and I have some verses that I'd like to read from the Bhagavad Gita, where we just talk about things that you also believe, the eternality of the soul, for example. I wasn't gonna quote sarva dharman parityajya. But that jerk, he was kind of a jerk, because we even paid him for this funeral. He should have it, but he was very sectarian. No, this is a church. You can't quote other scriptures. And so I remember when he gave the talk, father's coffin was, open casket was right there with his poor body there. It's very gloomy. It was a cold, rainy day, and I'll always remember, there must have been maybe a couple of hundred people in the church standing and sitting behind the pews. And this priest said, "We, the Christians or Catholics, we have understood from the Greeks, that the soul is eternal, but we also believe that to a certain degree, and this is the key point, he said, to a certain degree, we are part body." Again, coming back to this, we're 33% body, 33% mind, 33% spirit or soul. That's what many Christians believe, right? And so, like, that's what I said, like, even if it's 1%, what to speak of 33%, if you think in even any type of fraction of a percentage that the self is the body, you can have this samadarshina. Impossible, right? Because you're stuck on seeing the body, and there will, like Hridayananda Maharaj, points out, there will on the physical level, there will never be equality. There will always be differences. The only equality is metaphysical, not physical.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, your turn, unless you want to add something.
No, I think that is fine.
Okay.
Text 21. That knowledge by which a different type of living entity is seen to be dwelling in different bodies is knowledge in the mode of passion. Purport: the concept that the material body is a living entity, and that which the destruction of the body, the consciousness, is also destroyed, is called knowledge in the mode of passion. According to that knowledge, bodies differ from one another because of the development of different types of consciousness. Otherwise, there is no separate soul which manifests consciousness. The body is itself the soul, and there is no separate soul beyond this body. According to such knowledge, consciousness is temporary, or else there are no individual souls, but there is an all-pervading soul which is full of knowledge, and this body is a manifestation of temporary ignorance. Or beyond this body, there is no special individual or supreme soul. All such conceptions are considered products of the mode of passion. Translation again. That knowledge by which a different type of living entity is seen to be dwelling in different bodies is knowledge in the mode of passion.
So in a way, like, this caste system with no spiritual vision beyond that is knowledge in the mode of passion, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Right? You're completely different. You're different, right? You're completely, you're radically, ontologically, categorically, you're a different tattva than me. We share nothing, right? You're a Shudra, I'm a Brahmin, or whatever, and religious fanaticism, we could say, that's this type of jihad kind of mentality. You are so different from me that I can objectify you and kill you. I'm not a complete. I'm not a regarding the Holocaust and the story of the Jewish persecution by Germans and Hitler. I kind of stand in the middle. Like I haven't delved in it very much, and I sort of appreciate those who question the number of so-called deaths that happened in the so-called in the Holocaust. So, and the reason I say this is because there was one. I mean, he's wonderful, regardless of whether the Holocaust was exaggerated or not. Martin Buber. Have you heard of Martin Buber?
No.
50% of your life is spoiled, Prabhu.
So sorry.
You know the story, the joke of Prabhupada, right? 50% of your life is spoiled.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm joking. So here's a reference. This book here, I and Thou. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Let me go to another page. I and Thou. You see the book cover?
Yeah. Yes. I and Thou. Okay.
Yeah, I and Thou. I and Thou is a polite way to say you. And so his whole book was basically a challenge to he explained the rationale behind the Holocaust, and his point is that the Nazis were able to perform these atrocities because they managed to reduce the other, right, namely the Jews, to objects as opposed to persons. And so it's when that objectification of the other happens that now you're able and almost justified in doing whatever you want to them. because they're no longer human beings. They're no longer alive. They're no longer person. They've lost their personhood. They're just objects, and you can do whatever you want with an object. So for him, in his analysis, that was the key psychological event, that justified the atrocities of the Nazis. So in a similar way, we could make the relationship to this verse here of the Bhagavad Gita, where you have this knowledge in the mode of passion, where you see a different type of living entity. So at least here it's a little better, because at least you're not objectifying that much. You're still seeing a living entity, right? But it's so different. That living entity is so different that basically you're objectifying it, or you're, like I said, to use a Sanskrit term, you're like, the other is a whole different tattva, is so different, right? And that's knowledge in the mode of passion. Purport.
Okay.
The concept that the material body is the living entity, and that with the destruction of the body, the consciousness is also destroyed, is called knowledge in the mode of passion. According to that knowledge, bodies differ from one another because of the development of different types of consciousness. Otherwise, there is no separate soul which manifests consciousness. The body is itself the soul, and there is no separate soul beyond this body, right? And therefore, if the body's different, then you're categorically different from me, right? Racism, the whole, justification for doing all the horrible things that whites did to blacks, in the United States. Same sort of thing. Nigger, you're not a human, right? According to such knowledge, consciousness is temporary, or else there are no individual souls. That's another nonsense, but there is an all-pervading soul, which is full of knowledge, and this body is a manifestation of temporary ignorance. Or beyond this body, there is no special individual or supreme soul. All such conceptions are considered products of the mode of passion. Translation again.
Mayavad.
Yeah, right. That's a good. So, Mayavad, here, I mean, God, what Prabhupada said, that Vivekananda threw West Bengal into the mode of ignorance. You know that quote?
So what did he say?
Prabhupada said that Vivekananda was responsible for throwing or hurling or bringing West Bengal into Tamaguna.
Okay.
But here, you still today, you have to be careful when you criticize Vivekananda or Ramakrishna. They love him here.
Yeah.
But yesterday I was speaking
at Bengal, I think there is a good respect, entire India. If you speak anything, I think normally there is a backlash.
Oh, anywhere in India you speak about Vivekananda, there's a backlash?
I think there's a common, people have equated him with like nationalism, and even politicians use him, like representing what he said on the international forums.
What did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu say? Yeah, because Vivekananda was one of the first one. He was such a jerk in the sense, because he took advantage of that. It was a Chicago, the world, Chicago, right? Chicago, what year?
World Religious Conference.
Yeah, World Religions.
96 something, right?
Oh, really? Interesting. 1893. Wow, 3 years before Prabhupada's birth.
Yeah.
3 years before Prabhupada's birth. And so he took that microphone, and he was smart. And he ran with it, saying, yes, Hinduism is Advaita Vedanta, basically. That's what Hinduism is. It's Advaita Vedanta. And so as a result, you have 200 years of, studies in Hinduism in Western universities, where they just take it for granted. If merging into Brahman is the goal of the one Hinduism. What a horrible thing to do. And so he's praised and everything, but what did Lord Chaitanya say? And that's what I told these people in the Pandal. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Mayavadi Bhashya Shunile Hoy Sarvanash. Right? You listen to the Mayavadi Bhashya, then everything is spoiled. Okay, Prabhu, let's take a 5-minute break. And
yes, Prabhu.
Or you have a choice, because it's just the two of us. This sort of, if you want, we can just continue until 9 and we kind of cut it short by a half hour.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay,
No
let's do
problem.
that. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Because then I can also go to Mangal Artik tomorrow. And I'm giving Bhagavatam class, so please pray for me that I can,
In ISKCON Mayapur?
Yeah, in ISKCON Mayapur.
So I'll watch you then, Prabhu. I think they telecast it live, right?
Yeah. And it's a test for me
What time
because
is it? What time is it?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
It's going to be a test for me because I'm kind of like, I'm not in the specific ashram, so in that sense already I'm kind of a maverick. I'm not officially married, I'm not wearing saffron, so it's like, okay, who's this guy, like what ashram does he belong to? But I don't feel so bad because it seems like we have eternal associates of Lord Chaitanya who showed the example of that type of lifestyle. Like Pundarik Vidyanidhi, there's no evidence that he was married. Certainly Kolavichar Sridhar doesn't seem, there's no mention he was married. So there seems to be, a whole bunch of examples.
But brahmacharis give a class, right?
Huh?
Why is an issue? Like brahmacharis give a class, right?
Yeah, no, but they wear saffron.
Yeah, that is fine.
Okay, but then the other point is, Krishna West, and some of them know that I spoke up about the Lokanath Swami case, so I got to be really careful. I'm really praying to Krishna. That's why I went on Harinam the last few days, like trying to get all the mercy I could get during Harinam Sankirtan, because I noticed those devotees who go on Harinam, they always give very Siddhantic, to the point, non-controversial, pleasing to everybody classes, It's really true, like Vidyavadu Jivanam. It really is, Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. So here, there's a Harinam party that goes around. Actually, it just does 30 meters, but it does it for 3 hours every day. And there are a whole bunch of Bengali people who show up and, are, can I have selfie? Or they just look, and that activity, actually, I really believe really gives a lot of mercy. So I made it a point to go out and try to get some blessings. I went to Chandramoli Swami's class today. Also, he spoke really beautiful Damodar Lila Katha. So hopefully I'll be in enough good consciousness tomorrow to, to give a class that will be satisfactory and not a scandal. Okay, so
there's a lot of crowd tomorrow. I think it's Diwali, so a lot of people will come in the temple.
Tomorrow's Diwali.
Yeah, so like that 2-3 days now, there will be a lot of crowd. People Govardhan Puja and everything is a lot of
so
things.
tell me tell me in a few sentences what Diwali is when Lord Ramachandra comes back from Sri Lanka, right?
From Lanka, yeah. He returns back to Ayodhya. So people welcome, all the residents of Ayodhya welcome him, lighting all the many lamps.
So he's successful and everyone's happy, right? I wonder
everyone celebrates his return.
So he returns. It's interesting because he returns just before the new moon, just before Amavasya.
Yeah, so basically, around 1 month back, there is a Vijay Dashami when he killed Ravan, and after 1 month, approximately there is 1 month time when he returns back to Ayodhya, from Lanka to Ayodhya after killing Ravan. So there is a sequence.
One day before Amavasya, because Amavasya is considered to be sort of inauspicious, like great, you start things. So I guess he arrives just before Amavasya, and then they celebrate. It's interesting. Anyway, so thanks for telling me. So then I could evoke the mercy of Lord Ramachandra, right, at the beginning of the class. Okay, Prabhu, read on. Let's read for another 20 minutes. Mode of ignorance.
Text 22. Translation, and that knowledge by which one is attached to one kind of work as the all in all, without knowledge of the truth, and which is very meager, is said to be the mode of darkness.
Sorry, it's pronounced meager.
Yeah. And which is very meager, is said to be in the mode of darkness. Purport, knowledge of the common man is always in the mode of darkness or ignorance, because every living entity in conditional life is born into the mode of ignorance. One who does not develop knowledge to the authorities or scriptural injunctions as knowledge that is limited to the body. He is not concerned about acting in terms of the directions of scripture. For him, God is money, and knowledge means the satisfaction of bodily demands. Such knowledge has no connection with the absolute truth. It is more or less like the knowledge of the ordinary animals, the knowledge of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. Such knowledge is described here as a product of the mode of darkness. In other words, knowledge concerning the spirit soul beyond this body is called knowledge in the mode of goodness. And knowledge producing many theories and doctrines by dint of mundane logic and mental speculation is a product of mode of passion, and knowledge concerned with only keeping the body comfortable is said to be in the mode of ignorance. Translation: and that knowledge by which one is attached to one kind of work has all in all, without knowledge of the truth, and it is very meager, is said to be in the mode of darkness.
Text 23. Translation: as for actions, that action in accordance with duty, which is performed without attachment, without love or hate, by one who has renounced fruitive results, is called action in the mode of goodness. I really have to meditate on this verse for my French YouTube channel, because it's such a labor of love, to make that I'm going to say damn because I speak about Krishna on it, but to make that channel grow, oh my God, so much effort for such little return. At least the English channel, which I'm not putting enough effort in, many Indian well-wishers are there and they watch, and if hundreds of views come. I'm still really small compared to like I Love Mayapur, or there's this Russian girl who's very beautiful. It's like cooking for Krishna or something. She also has several 100,000 followers. What to do? But so the verse is applicable to but for the French channel, Vignesh, oh my God, I have to listen to this. I have to remind myself. According with duty, Hridayananda Maharaj instructed me to preach in French. He even told me you should, have an online morning program. Literally, that's what he said. But I guess it also includes just videos. And it should be done without attachment. And I like to quote him. He says, I just work here. Like someone who's an employee in a company, whether the company makes 5 million a year or 1 million a year, that employee still gets the same amount of money. Except if he's a high place and he gets benefits. But let's say if he's just a janitor who cleans the toilet, whether like the success or failure of the company doesn't affect his pay, right? So similarly, like without attachment, without love or hate, okay? One who has renounced fruitive results, same thing, karma vikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Makar phala heturur mati sangasto karmani. That's action in the mode of goodness. Purport: regulated occupational duties, as prescribed in the scriptures in terms of the different orders and divisions of society, performed without attachment or proprietary rights, and therefore without any love or hatred, and performed in Krishna consciousness for the satisfaction of the Supreme, without self-satisfaction or self-gratification, are called actions in the mode of goodness. Okay.
Text 24. Translation: but action performed with great effort by one seeking to gratify his desires, and which is enacted from a sense of false ego, is called action in the mode of passion.
Like over endeavoring, right? Rupa Goswami, we can draw a parallel to Rupa Goswami's Nectar of Instruction, right? Which we'll read. No, we already read that, right? We went through Nectar of Instruction or not?
No, that is pending. That is
pending.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we still have Nectar of Devotion and Nectar of Instruction.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you've read it, right? Where he says, over endeavoring for something that is very difficult to obtain, right? Yeah. God, I remember I had this godbrother, disciple of Bhakti Charusam, I forget his name. We were in Bombay, in Juhu, and it was during the filming of this television series, Abhay Charan. And he wanted to go to America so bad. And at one point he literally had this nervous breakdown where he was like crying and like slamming the door or slamming the floor, like, I want to go to America, I want to go to America, I want to go to America, you know. And I was like, whoa. And so in a way we could say that's kind of like, you know, great effort by one seeking, you know, why do you go to America? You don't go to America, you know, from India, Hindu India. You don't want to go to America to, you know, become self-realized. Although a lot do, the pious ones, you know, they go to America and that's when they meet Vaisheshika Prabhu and, you know, intelligent IIT graduates who made the right choice of becoming Krishna conscious in America. I mean, like Bhakti Charuswami himself, you know, he wasn't interested in spirituality. He had to go to Germany to awaken, you know, a desire for self-realization. And then finally he went back to India looking for a guru. So it happens to a lot of, I mean, actually not a lot. I'm sure the large majority of Indians who immigrate, you know, to America, for example, you know, they keep their little piety maybe, but it's all about sense gratification, you know. It's all about getting ahead materially, you know, and let's just do a Jagadisha Hare once a week, just to make sure the bases are loaded, as they say.
Yeah.
I remember just a small example, I used to go to the LAX airport again to distribute books. I told this story to these Indians yesterday, these Bengali people who were at the pandal, you know, and I would stop these Indians who would like naturally pass through the airport, and every time, like, where are you going? Oh, we are going to Disneyland. You know, where are you from? In Delhi. And I'd be like, okay, have you ever been to Vrindavan? No. And I'd be like, okay, you're spending like probably $2,000, $4,000, $5,000 just to get your whole family across the planet to go see Donald Duck, when you could just pay 50 rupees and in 3 hours you could be in Vrindavan. And then, you know, I would show them the
Even if
Bhagavad.
they go to Vrindavan, generally, you know, these people normally make a lot of offenses. They, you know, see a lot of things which are very dirty in Vrindavan, and then they start complaining. You know, when I have
But
seen this kind of people as well.
they go to Vrindavan. That's glorious.
Yeah, that
It's
is true.
glorious to go to Vrindavan.
Yeah.
Then I would say, okay, have you read? Here's the Bhagavad Gita. Oh, we are knowing Bhagavad Gita. Okay, what's your favorite verse? You cannot say yada yada hi dharmasya, because they would always say yada, and I always wondered, why do they always say yada yada hi dharmasya? And I read, because it was the Doordarshan Mahabharata opener, you know. Oh, Krishna. Okay, text 25. Go ahead.
Text 25. No, I think. Yeah, text 25.
I read 24.
Yeah. And that action performed in ignorance and delusion, without consideration of future bondage or consequences, which inflicts injury and is impractical, is said to be in the action in the mode of ignorance. Purport: one has to give account of one's action to the state or to the agents of the Supreme Lord, called Yamudutas. Irresponsible work is distraction because it destroys the regulative principles of a scriptural injunction. It is often based on violence and is distressing to other living entities. Such irresponsible work is carried out in the light of one's personal experience. This is called illusion, and all such illusory work is a product of the mode of ignorance.
Wow, this is heavy purport, huh? One has to give account of one's actions to the state or to the agents of the Supreme Lord, called the Yamadutas. There's a sannyasi who passed away already 10, 15 years ago, Prabhupada disciple. His name was, I forget his name. And he wrote this really cool book called Overcoming Obstacles in Krishna Consciousness. And he was one of the first, devotees who was kind of like addressing issues that were kind of kept, taboo, Like, for example, accidental fall downs, or, you know, disagreements with temple presidents, or, and let me see. And and the reason why I mention him is because I forget now. Oh, Yamadutas. So he told this story far out. Oh, it's called unspoken obstacles on the path to bhakti. Here, I'll send the link. This is actually a very well thought of book. Maybe it's a little bit irrelevant now because, you know, but at the time it's Purna Chandra, and he took sannyas, Purna Chandra Prabhu. And so he told the story of how he was distributing Prabhupada's books in the San Francisco airport, and there was this one businessman who would come every week or so and would just like literally with his briefcase would like hit the devotees, you know, was very rude or very demoniac. And what happened? I mean, this devotee like saw how another devotee, like, you know, or maybe I'm confusing. He wasn't not a nice guy. It was just a guy who stopped and who like, I'm not going to give you anything or something like that. Or a long story short, the guy left, you know, really arrogant, having insulted the devotee. But then he came back like 3 days later, and he was like, can I have one of your books, please? And he's like, and he, you know, he was clearly shooken up, and he's like, what happened? You know, yeah, sure. And he's like, I have to tell you, I went to get a heart surgery, and I had a near-death experience. I actually died, and while I was dead, there was like these horrible, ghoulish, monstrous creatures coming to get me. And then the devotee was like, "Oh, you mean these people?" And he opened, you know, the inside cover of the, and then he was like, "Yes, these people. Oh my God, I never want to see them again." And he said something like, I don't have the story but completely right, but it's something to this effect. He's like, they were about to take me, but then they were like, "Oh no, you know, he met the devotee at the airport, so let's leave him alone." Or he gave a donation, because maybe he gave $1 or something. So he was like, "Please let me have a book." And here, you know, and he gave him his watch. Like, he didn't have any cash on him. He gave him his watch, like a fine, you know, expensive watch. So I bring this up because, you know, the Yamadutas seem to be a reality, and Prabhupada it's a very heavy statement, you know. One has to give account of one's actions to the Yamadutas, man. And then it's interesting. He says, you know, irresponsible work, which basically means sinful life, yeah, breaking the regulative principles, one could interpret, is distraction because it destroys the regulative principles of scriptural injunction. And it is often based on violence. So we could say, you know, meat eating, for example, but even, you know, illicit sex, for example. Illicit sex is violence, is distressing. When you perform, you know, when you engage in illicit sex, you invariably create distress to the other person, especially a man towards a woman, you know. So all these guys who are, you know, who are thinking, yeah, I'm just gonna have, you know, one night stands with, you know, Janaki, and with, you know, whatever, with Sarmishta, and then with, you know, whatever, Hema next week, and then they're like, yeah, this is very cool, this is modern. They don't realize that, you know, they're creating really bad karma, and the girls end up suffering, you know, because they suffer more emotionally. From what I understand, get emotionally, you know, attached and pained. So it's really messy. Such irresponsible work is carried out in the light of one's personal experience. I don't know what Prabhupada means by that, but it's clearly a product of the mode of ignorance. Okay, let's read the last verse. It's your turn, I think.
Yeah. Text 26, translation. The worker who is free from all mental attachments and false ego, who is enthusiastic and resolute, and who is indifferent to success or failure, is a worker in the mode of goodness.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry, I had my mind elsewhere.
Yeah. Translation. The worker who is free from all mental attachments and false ego, who is enthusiastic and resolute, and who is indifferent to success or failure is a worker in the mode of goodness.
Again, this idea, right, of working without attachment
Yeah.
to success or failure. Go ahead.
Purport: a person in Krishna consciousness is always transcendental to the material modes of nature. He has no expectations for the result of the work entrusted to him because he is above false ego and pride. Still, he is always enthusiastic till the completion of such work. He does not worry about the distress undertaken. He is always enthusiastic. He does not care for success or failure. He is equal both distress or happiness. Such a worker is situated in the mode of goodness.
Wow. So nice to hear that. Okay, Vignesh Prabhu. Let's just do 1, 2, or 3 Mahamantras. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga, Gaurahari. Nitai Gauranga, Gaurahari. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga, Gaurahari. Nitai Gauranga, Gaurahari. Patita Pavana Gaurahari. Patita Pavana Gaurahari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Jai, thank you, Prabhu. Hope this was okay. It was nice. We had good Sunday.
Yeah, it was a good
Prabhupada.
session. Yeah.
Jai. Thank you. So
Hare Krishna.
have a good week. See you in 2 weeks. Gauranga.
Hare Krishna. Good night.